Hi, this is Bruce. Today I'm here to talk about how to sell honey under Florida's cottage food laws. It's going to be a good one. Hang on. Okay, about a year and a half ago, I did a video, almost 2 years ago now that I think about it, on selling honey under Florida's cottage food laws. And I talked about the ways you do it. And, you know, it was good stuff. There's been some changes to the law that are really exciting. And I'm going to go over that with you right now. First of all, in the video I did before, I said you could have gross sales up to $50,000, you know, and that seemed like a lot of money that I could do with just honey sales. But there's some changes to the law now. All right, now before I go into that, suppose I have my grandmother's recipe for something amazing. My grandmother, she was a great cook. And I want to share that with the world. I want to cook it and sell it and make a couple of bucks. Unfortunately, I can't do that unless I comply with all the laws. I can't do that in my house and take it out and sell it. It has to be done in a commercial kitchen. Excuse me. It has to be done in a commercial kitchen. It has to be inspected. There's a whole bunch of laws and regulations for food handling safety that I have to comply with. Otherwise, I'll be subject to some pretty hefty fines. However, the state of Florida has its cottage foods exemption law where certain foods are exempt from that. Foods such as certain types of cookies and jams, but honey is exempted. So I can spin up honey in my house, I can bottle it in my kitchen, and I can sell it to consumers without having to get a commercial license. It's good stuff. Under the new law that has changed, the first thing that's just huge is I'm allowed to have $250,000 of gross sales and still qualify for the cottage food exemption. $250,000. Now that's the gross sales. That includes if I'm selling jam, cookies, and honey, all those together can't exceed $250,000, but still, that's a pretty good lot of stuff that I can sell and still qualify for the food handler's exemption. Now, one caveat is, again, I'm mostly concerned with honey. And honey's not the main thing that I do by any means, but with honey, I have to store my product at my residence, at my house, okay? If I was to sell $250,000 worth of honey, I could imagine barrels of honey all in my house everywhere I look. But anyway, the law is I can't have a warehouse or something elsewhere. I've got to sell it from my house, okay? All right, that's pretty good stuff. But there's another change to the law that's even better, even better. Before, if I was to sell my honey, I had to sell it person to person, right? To qualify for the exemption, I couldn't just take it to a store and sell it wholesale and have that store start selling it. If I wanted to do that, I'd have to get a license before, and I still have to do that if I want to do it that way. But, okay, what else? I can still go to a flea market and sell it at a flea market, a farmer's market. I could put up a roadside stand. I could carry a bunch of honey to where I work and sell it to my coworkers. All those things I could still do. The big change to the law that I really like is now I can sell my honey over the internet. Over the internet. That means I can get a website, advertise my honey, take payment over the internet, and ship my honey even out of state. As long as I comply with all those other things, I qualify for the exemption and I don't have to register myself as a commercial entity. That's really good stuff. Now, I still do have to comply with all the label requirements, and I'm going to go over that too. But This is good. This is good stuff. Changes to the law that work. The University of Honey put out an excellent guide to the bottling, labeling, and selling of honey in Florida. And I'll leave you a link in the comments below. All right. It talks about what's covered under the cottage food exemption and how you qualify under this exemption. Great stuff. Here we're going to talk a little bit about the requirements for the label on honey that's sold as a cottage food exemption. All right. You have to have the name and address. You have to have your name and your address or your business entity on the label. No fictitious names are permitted. Okay. You have to have your complete street address, including the zip code, no post office box. The name of the product is, you can use honey, you can use natural honey, you can use raw honey, but you really shouldn't use organic honey unless you can prove that the bees can't get to anything except organic grown products. The ingredients, okay? You have to have the, if you're using infused honey, you have to have something like lime essence honey or something like that. The net weight or net volume of the honey products. All this has to be in English, by the way. Allergen information, that doesn't really apply to honey because it's not listed as an allergen, but honey has been associated with infant botulism and is considered a dietary risk for infants under 1 year age. So it's recommended that you display on your labels, do not feed to infants less than 1 year old. It's recommended, but that doesn't mean it's completely required. The following statements must be at least in 10-point type on a color that provides clear contrast. And that says, made in a cottage food operation that is not subject to Florida's food safety regulations. And here's an example of the minimum information that you'd have to have. Okay. Additional labeling information. Avoid nutritious claims, right? So avoid things like packed with energy, low in fat, good for allergies. Because if you do that, you'll have to display the nutritional content label, even though this is a cottage food. All right. Good stuff. Optional words you may use. Pure honey, natural honey, all natural. Those are acceptable. Okay. If you want to put down something like orange blossom honey, you have to be able to certify that the bees are not really getting to other floral sources except for citrus honey. That's getting hard here in Florida now because our citrus industry is not what it once was. All right, additional cottage food regulations, I think I covered that earlier. Okay. Okay, so if I'm a wholesale honey guy and I'm not selling it under the cottage food industry, this is an example of the label that I would use. The nutritional labeling, again, if I am selling it under the cottage food laws, I don't have to put this on. But if I'm selling it as a wholesale guy, that I have to put on. Common labeling mistakes. If you putting the net contents in the upper part of the label, it has to be in the lower 30% of the label. Using an improper net weight statement. Omitting a portion of the address, particularly the zip code. Claiming a pure floral source, and improperly identifying a blended honey with a single floral source. Okay? So this is good stuff, and I do urge you to get out there and sell your honey. Whew. Man, it's getting hot already. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you learned something. I want you to sell a bunch of honey and make a little bit of money. This is about the only hobby I can think of that kind of pays you back. If you're frugal, you can spend a lot of money in beekeeping, don't get me wrong. But if you're frugal about it. You build your own woodwork, you do all these other things that we do. You can actually make a little bit of money with honey and with other bee products. All right, this is Bruce, and I'll see you the next time.